Okay, we're recording.
Great.
So,
So let's go.
we're reading Binti. Yes.
We did it! We won our book!
Nailed it. That's it. It's over. Bye.
We're done. We can be done.
Should we start with introductions again? What?
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Oh, okay. I'll start. My name is Reed Jordan. And I am just so in love with Afrofuturism and this book. That's what I am.
I am Bernadette Miracle, and I also am in love with Afrofuturism, but especially Black. So.
I am Lawrence Barriner, also in love with Afrofuturism. Really enjoying it in writing form, in written form, and also in music form.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whew. So, what should we start with?
Yeah, where do we start?
I would just say, like, this book is, it's a I have a similar experience reading some of Octavia Butler's books, where it's like a challenging book to read. Like, it really takes a lot of like engagement for me to understand like what's happening in some ways, because like there's all these she doesn't like fill in all the pieces in the narrative. Like, you have to really like piece it together yourself. And I love that like she like makes you like work for it. You know, it's like you gotta work like with this book to really get it.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, I think like it was really hard for me to understand for the first, like when it was first introduced, like the concept of like what harmonizers do and what like this ability she has to like see mathematical like equations.
Oh yeah, treeing.
Yeah, treeing. I was like, what is this? So it's like further on into the book was like, oh, there's like this deep like meditative state where she can just like break out the world into like its mathematical like components. And like that's what it is. So I didn't get that till like maybe like the third or fourth reference to what like it was.
Do either of you speak other languages other than English?
A little bit Spanish.
Yeah, I speak a little bit of Spanish.
Me too.
Yeah.
Born in El Paso, Texas, and most of my friends are very, very fluent in Spanish, if not multiple other languages. And so it was interesting to me, especially because in the book, she does speak multiple other languages, especially at university where people are from all over and speak multiple languages, not just Earth, is that the mathematical equations part, to me, it was hard at first to like get into, just because it was my own space of like being pretty much monolingual and being like, oh, so she's just speaking another language in this math space. And I love how you like captured the meditative state of it, because like when I have been I've always been intrigued throughout my life with like people who speak multiple languages and wondering if like in the case of Spanish or math, like, are you seeing it in English first, then translating it in your mind, and then speaking it out kind of thing? And so that meditative space of having to be intentional about how you're choosing to see or engage the world through language in particular was really interesting to me personally in that space of like, wow. And probably it's because like growing up, I thought I was going to be a geneticist and it was very math heavy. And so that was the thing that kind of kicked me out of that space, was being in math classes that were not about it as a beautiful language of trying to communicate meaning, but really about like, it's just equations, which I love how she writes about it as being so much more than equations. And it's this meditative space. And I'm like, man, if I would have had some math teachers like that, I would probably be math right now.
Oh my God, yes.
But yeah, it's beautiful to me how you also picked up on that like meditative space with the math.
Hmm.
Have I talked about the book Mindstorms with y'all?
Well, not with me.
No, I don't think so.
I'm like copying my book notes for this book. And this guy is a contemporary of Paulo Freire. So like Pedagogy of the Oppressed and this book to me are like sort of companion texts.
Hmm.
And I just bring it up because one of the things that he talks about in this book, which is not Binti, is exactly what you're talking about, Bernadette, where people teach math in this like equations first way, and how that ruins mathematical thinking for pretty much anybody who goes through that education system. And he comes up with these little, it's this exercise. It's a computer program where you like give a kid like a program that can do this, and you give them the directions for that. And it's like, now draw this, starting from this. And then he like demonstrates how a kid figures out like, okay, if I can do one of these, I can do two of these. If I change the equation a little bit, then I can get a half circle. And then you like learn and you're like, oh, that isn't the right thing. What I want is this. So you can experiment your way to like, okay, this is a petal, and now I can draw 4 petals, and now I can draw the whole flower. And then you're like, oh, if I have a flower equation, I can draw like lots of flowers.
Wow.
Right.
Anyway, so this book is amazing because it talks about math in that way, and I think it's like really important. But it very much is connected to Binti, because it's like for her, it's like literally grounded in the earth.
Hmm.
But I
like
think also
she comes from an earth tribe.
Right, which I don't want to lose that point. But also to the Mindstorm space of like the curiosity and the not necessarily knowing the answer, but wanting to continually play with the math to get to a particular place makes me think of her and is it the Iran that she has that she doesn't know how it works or how to make it do anything, but by being curious and continually being like, I know these basic equations, but I can tree with them to get to this space of finding new and powerful things that this thing is capable of doing that aren't like, I need it to transport me here, and so I need to figure out that, but are like, I have no idea what it can do. And if I keep treeing and playing with it and running current through it, then maybe I'll find something out that I completely had no idea it was even capable of doing. And that's cool math to me. Like math to explore as opposed to like math to like know that 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or does it?
Right, or does it? So can we talk about her Idan?
Yeah. Yes.
What a device, like what a magical, obviously the device itself is magical, but like what a magical construction as a narrative tool. Like what?
Yeah. It like had so many like functions in the story. It was like a communication device. It was like almost this like defensive like weapon. It was like something that rooted her to like her home. Yeah, it's like something she had to like unlock its like true potential of. There's just so much to. Yeah, I still kind of know what to like make of this, but it's like it's so clear that there's some connection between like the Idan and like the Medusa in a way that like indicates some like very deep like. Well, I've just read the story, just read the book more, but like some very deep connection between like Mother Medusa and like Earth, or like Medusa and like its own people, that like they'd be affected by the Idan in such a way. Yeah.
I was really fascinated making up connections between like the space of she has to run current through it. Like she personally has to be connected to it for it to work, right? It's pretty much just an inanimate object until she runs current through it. And to me, like this space of like all the things that you mentioned, from communicator to connection to earth, all these things are things that she is. I mean, and they talk about like the master harmonizers and how she's one of the best out there that there is. And like we haven't really seen it in other people's hands. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm not thinking of the next book, which I've already started reading, but like, so like in her hands, it's a certain thing, but she found it kicking around in the desert, right? And so in someone else's hands that it might have been in before, like, was it something completely else based off of who they were?
Oh, yeah.
That's mad interesting. Because it seems like it's pretty old.
Right. Like, not even just like my grandmama maybe made this, but like ancestrally, generationally old artifact.
Yeah, and there's a part that I marked, it was on page 49. It's, I'm trying to remember the exact scene, but basically Oku is asking her, like, what is that? What is this thing made of? And Binti says, I don't really know, but a desert woman once called it, or said it was made from something called Godstone. My father said there's no such thing, basically. But it has this like mythic quality.
Yeah.
Like a narrative mythic quality. Like there's a story about it that's mystical or mythic. And it's also very clearly physical and grounded. And yeah, as Montreal was saying, like has this clear connection between the Medusa. There's some connection between the Medusa. And I wonder, thinking about Bernadette, you're talking about the master harmonizer thing, like if math is like a fundamental, like if math is as fundamental to the universe as Earth, or like as like matter, or if the math is like even more fundamental to the universe than matter, and maybe that's why the Idan is able to connect, like have an impact on the Medusa, and like sometimes dangerous ways and sometimes healing ways. I can't remember what, something heals one of the Medusa's tentacles, right?
Yeah.
It was her clay.
I'm not going to pronounce it right, but it was the dirt clay oil that she has.
Yes. Okay, it was Idan. Yeah. Anyway, it's just like thinking about the Earth, mythical connections to the different parts of the story in the world.
Like the Ochise. Right. So, yeah. So many layers.
So many layers.
This so Ochise was really interesting to me because like she leaves home and is searching for the clay / soil to make it again when once she's gone. And so like her, I'm going to say a word that sounds very negative, but like hoarding it and being like, yes, I see and you see that it healed your tentacle, but no, you can't have the rest of, I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to have this again. I don't intend on going home. So like, I need this for as long as forever. And it's not so much that it's healing to her, to Binti, in the same way that it is to him. Like, it's not like, hey, I broke my arm and I needed to like fix my arm kind of thing, but like, this is my identity that you're taking away from me. I use this to bathe. I use this to wrap my hair in. Like, it's what keeps me connected to being earthling and being of my people. And yes, I can see that it heals you, but also I'm not trying to heal all your people, all yours.
Yeah.
with my little 6 ounces
Yeah.
left
Yeah.
after this intergalactic journey. Like, especially after you done killed the love of my life and everybody else. I'm not trying to like cure y'all. That whole altruistic space when you know you have the power to heal others, either through something that you're able to make or whatever, and do you want to be the healer of people who have like torn apart your people? Is what I was talking about a lot in the like, not so much bridging between books, but like the real life stuff, like the commentary around like every election. Black women gonna get you and they're gonna like save you, but like, do I want to keep saving you in Alabama and Mississippi if you're gonna keep doing crazy stuff that's like tearing apart my people? Like, is that my job? And that was some notes that I wrote watching the curing of the tentacle, where I was like, would I be this is me, right? Would I be the bigger person and be like, ooh, I can go heal some people and maybe then they'll like be better folks to my folks? I don't. She didn't intentionally do that, but she also, we talked about power structures in the last one, right? Like, she was kind of powerless to be like, oh, you can't have any of this.
Yeah.
Locked away in her little cabin.
Yeah. Dang, that reminds me of so many things. I don't know if you're finished.
Yeah.
So yeah, thinking about electoral politics, very much like that story is as old as this country, if not older. And part of my job with the Center for Story-Based Strategy in this month is to like review memes that were produced in the year 2018. And me and some folks on staff are putting together a blog post of like, what are the top 10 memes of 2018? And that's sort of a unnecessary detail, but to say I've been looking through memes, and one that someone posted earlier this year, a professor found an article from like 1934. It was an op-ed in a newspaper of someone telling Jewish people to be civil to Nazis. It was like obviously before World War II. It was like, close to 10 years before the war started. But it was this op-ed piece that was like, yeah, Jewish people, like, you're of better, like, that you have the moral high ground. So you should attempt to bring the other side over by being bigger people. And obviously, hindsight is like add some depth to that particular op-ed, but just to make another parallel, Bernadette, like you're making, like, yeah, this is showing up in Alabama, in Georgia, and Mississippi, and has shown up for a long time across many different identities. And right now I'm thinking a lot about particularly, like that one weekend or that 1 week where like Jewish folks were murdered in a temple and Black folks were murdered in a church. And like those particular oppressions have actually been those stories have been wrapping around each other, I think, for a while. And so it's just like really, that question is present for me, like in the moment where your oppressor is arguably gaining power or in power over you, what is your responsibility? How do you react? How do you plan? How do you act? And I had another thought, but I forgot it. I'm gonna leave it.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's also this like additional layer for Binti where like she's basically thrown into this war between these like the Meduse and like the Koosh people, the humans who seem basically like white people. And like the Meduse like don't even know that like Binti's people like exist, and that like there are potential for humans to like have any decency. And so it's on her shoulders. First, she's just like the like extreme numerical minority of her own people, of like humans experiencing suppression. But then she has to like intervene in this massive conflict and like basically save like Kush from themselves in some ways. And it's not until like the Medusa meets Binti where they're like, oh, there's this like potential for humans to actually like, I don't know, be civil. Yeah.
Not interesting.
I think the piece that you pointed us to on page 49 around the Godstone and Oakley talking about know that shame brought up this whole other layer around like religion and the extremes of religion, right? And how some people will see a particular religious view as like this is life, this is savior, and I'll do anything for this particular thing. And I don't think Binti was at all. Well, I'll take that back. I was going to say I don't think she was at all like thinking that way, but perhaps after having just been saved by this Iran, that she's like, I don't even know what it does, but it just saved my life. Like, would she do anything for it and be like, okay, this is my new religion basically, and I do see it as Godstone, because of that whole exchange with it, where Oakley was like, it's shame kind of thing. And so that whole layer that I typically don't really get into much in sci-fi, even Afrofuturism, because of this whole space of creationism and all the rest, but like how that showed up in that particular little moment. I'm really curious to see how it shows up, if at all, to the
Yeah, it has like very, for me, it's reminiscent of Earthseed in Parable of the Talents, Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler, right? Have you both read those two books?
I have.
Great. Oh, we should talk about those. Anyway, my point was like Lauren is the main character of Parable of the Sower, right?
Yeah.
And she like is in relationship with her father, who's Christian, but she's like, fuck that. I don't want to know that. And then eventually is like, oh, I guess I'm the one who's bringing this like faith to these people. Like, dang. But Earthseed as a thing that she sort of discovers, she feels like she has discovered it, and it becomes her new religion, which then, in a sense, like saves a lot of people. Doesn't save everyone, but is like a savior-esque. There is some savior energy around it in like a mythical, this like religious quality. It's interesting. I hadn't made that connection before you said that, Bernadette, about like religion in these contexts.
And are you guys familiar with like Ifa and their Rishas and like Seven Powers kind of stuff in Africa, like religiously? Because she mentioned, she mentioned Seven Powers, and I was like, is this? So I was gonna do a little bit more reading to see if like I'm reaching too far or not. But yeah, I was like, okay, because it's a very earth-based religion from Earthseeds, and just how connected she was to Binti was to like home being about a place and the desert and the earth in ways that a lot of the other characters were not, was something that I was like, oh, that's really powerful in a series like this, where it isn't real so far, isn't really earth based. in terms of the place that we're talking about.
Well, speaking of Earth-based stuff, the Ochize is like, and we've talked a little bit about it, particularly Bernadette. Yeah, you were talking about like the scarcity protection mindset she's taken to it, which, as you said so clearly, is very fucking reasonable. And I'm not that familiar with like literally Earth-based spiritual practices on the African continent. I'm just curious, like, as the character of that clay is sort of developing throughout the book, like, what were you thinking about it? Like, what came up for you about it? Surprising stuff, things that felt consistent with some other things.
Yeah, I thought, I just love that, like, that this, like, clay, the substance is, like, so marked her as an outsider in this, like, it's, like, migration journey that she was on, or immigration journey. It ended up being, like, the substance that basically saved her life. I really love that.
It's interesting because I probably wouldn't find the page that I marked for it, but as she first starts her journey and the kush on the shuttle that she's on are kind of like moving away from her, and the disparaging ways of like, your people are people who wash with dirt kind of thing. Immediately from reading that, I was like, oh, this must be some beautiful ass dirt. Because like it's rare that people are noticing like things that they're not envious of. And so like I mean, I'm from the desert, and so I've seen the many hues of how beautiful dirt, particularly this clayish dirt, particularly mixed with oil, can like be and feel. And so have never been to Africa, right? But like I could feel her sense of like, oh, that must be a really luxurious clay mask, and her skin must be on point because she's kind of going on with this, right? But then when she described rubbing it not only on her skin but like through her hair as well, and on her I had my own like right, my own hair stories going on there. I was just like, oh man, and it just kept getting more magical for me. Like when it cured the tentacle, and then when she got her own tentacles and was like, I'm still gonna rub it into these. I mean, I love how you voiced it as like, tell me about this character, the clay itself as character. I'm like, you're right, it is its like own character. It's this pretty it's a magical but also so basic thing, right? Like it's dirt. It's dirt and oil that have been mixed together in really purposeful and intentional combination for her to identify herself, and her journey of getting to this space again of hoarding it, like this is part of my identity and you can't just snatch it and take it from me just because you think it's great, kind of really brought me into this space of like cultural appropriation and all the rest, that I was like, okay, so Medusa wants your stuff now, right? But they probably would have been just like everybody else talking about, oh, you the people that like rub dirt on yourselves for cleanliness, and how odd is that, until you realize that it could actually heal you. And so it was the character and into itself for me.
Lawrence, what did you think about it?
Well, I mean, the characterness, it felt like a physical embodiment of culture, which I think, Brenda, is what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, this is core to my identity, and it's it's at risk pretty much always of being shat on by people who don't understand it. But when people get what it is and how beautiful it is, then they try to take it. So the appropriation thing, yeah, those dynamics are like, they were super present for me. What was or a couple of things that were interesting, like, so putting it in her hair, like rolling her hair in it, to me felt very much like protective. And I looked up a bunch of stuff about the Himba people, which is, I think, the culture that she was basing Binti's tribe on. And so, maybe she says that in the book. Is it explicit? She's
at
like,
the very
"These are the
end,
people."
like when you read the credits and whatnot. Yep.
Yeah. So thinking about Earth and culture as like shield, or like as protection, when I was imagining it, when I saw pictures of people with it in their locks, I was like, oh wow, it's like, it looks like the walls of a home. It's like that smooth and that hard. So I was thinking about culture in that way. So that was a big thing. And then I was just like, where is she gonna make more? Like, I hope that she finds a way.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a super long tangent I'm not going to go all the way into, but I'm reading this book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is sort of about the weaving together of indigenous ways of knowing and being and like Western scientific ways of knowing and being. And like, this one person has academic training and has been, she's gone through initiation ceremonies in her Potawatomi culture community. And one thing she talks about, this is Robin Wall Kimmerer, she talks about becoming indigenous to whatever place you're in. And that indigeneity is about relationship to land. It's not just about relationship to lineage, which is how most of us talk about it in the US. It's like, oh, that person's indigenous, which means they come from these people. And she's saying, no, it's about connection to the physical earth that supports you. My point in saying all that is, I was just thinking about Binti, like, how is she gonna become in good relationship or in right relationship with some new soil so that she can protect herself with it, or like integrate herself with the place. This is making me think a lot about what I'm trying to do in my life these days. Like, how am I becoming embedded or intertwined with the earth that I'm on, like this particular plot of earth, and then like more broadly.
It's really interesting. I wonder, projection. I wonder if she wants that, right? Like, so I'm originally, I was born in Texas, and I was talking with a friend the other day about how I'm completely housed but still homeless in the space that I live in up here on this end of the 90 in Seattle, where I don't really feel like I have community, and I don't feel connected to the land here and to the people, and that I'm not of this place. And so, like, Binti being from a place where she was very, very connected to like the earth and the people, and came from a tradition of people who don't leave and don't travel, which is kind of the space that I'm in. I'm like, does she feel like she's letting go and loosening connection to one place in order to put in roots in another place? Does she feel transplanted, like transplanting plants? Or does she feel like it's the roots underground that are connected wherever you go kind of space? And how might she be processing that as she's so far away from home, not just physically, but like from the Tuesday to the people, and being like, she's now the only human from her class year that's going to be at the university because everybody else is killed on the way there. So like,
oh my god, I didn't even think about that.
So she's so one-off there. Like, does she want to be the one seed that starts something new in a completely new place, or does she continue to long for, not even continue to, because I think she's still in this space of like, I'm still in the journey of leaving home. It's not like I've left in period, I'm gone, and now I long for going back. But like, I can't wait to get into the next books to like see like, how does her connection to home